name is Garrett Chandler. I am joined by Richard Balsley, Scott Ellison, the rest of the team here. We've got a special couple of guests today, Nicole and Carlos, who are here to talk about Take a Test. It is February 14th, so happy Valentine's Day. We're excited you're here with us. And Scott, I'm probably going to kick it over to you since you kind of carried the list of updates together for the team. Can you kind of go through and share what we've got?
Yeah, absolutely, Garrett. Thanks, everybody. Glad everybody can make it this week. So we actually got a lot of content that was released over the last 2 weeks. So a couple of things that I think you should take a look at. First blog here is commercial control for continuous innovation. So what does that necessarily mean? So if you haven't noticed in Windows 11 22H2, we have these new things called moments. And that's where when the specific quality or update is released via Windows, new features will be turned on, so to speak. So what they've done with this GPO and MDM update is they have added some ability to give you some enterprise controls that you can either enable features or you can disable these features that are, or you can actually enable the features that are turned off via the servicing by default. So take a look at that blog post. We can get more into a deep dive in that if that's something that is requested. But go and check that GPO. That will be in an optional. The GPO will be updated for that, I believe, in the February optional, and then I think in March it'll come out. I'll have to go back and check the blog. But anyway, go out there and look at that and get familiar with that, especially as that going forward is going to be important for you to be able to manage the specific servicing features that come out in Windows. There are 3 links here for different skilling snacks. We have one on feature update management. We had another one released on security. And then we had another one that was released on end user readiness. So the end user readiness is really good, especially if you're going to be planning a migration to Windows 11 and you need materials that you can download, training, things that you can customize for your environment. You should be able to download some of those things. So excellent stuff there. Next slide, Garrett. All right. Probably one of the bigger ones that I saw this week was if you have, we've done several sessions on Unified Update Platform, or called UUP. This allows you to have all of your, if you're using Windows Update for Business, it allows you to use your features on demand and your language packs. It preserves all those upgrades and everything. Traditionally, that Unified Update Platform was only available for Windows Update for Business. And so now, if you're still using on-premise WSUS or using on-premise configuration manager, there is now an update that will allow you to take advantage of the Unified Update Platform. And so I would suggest that if you're planning to stay on any type of patching anytime soon, and you're not planning on moving it over to Intune or just using Windows Update Business in general, and you want to get some of the advantages that Unified Update Platform provides, then you need to read this blog, because there is it contains a lot of great information. And again, I think we could devote a endpoint office hours just to this topic for those who are still going to be using a lot of those solutions on premise. So definitely check that out. There's also a new Intune blog on support for your attack surface reduction rules. So if you want to expand on that, you can check that out, and it will give you some great information there. And then if any of you are interested in certification, right now there is a new exam that will be being released in May of 2023. It's going to be right now, that certification is called Microsoft Desktop Administrator Associate. And currently today, it requires 2 exams, MD 100 and MD 101. Both of those exams are going to be scheduled for retirement later this year, I think in the July timeframe. And they're going to be replaced with one exam. So it'll just be MD 102. So that'll make the getting that. So instead of having to pay for 2 exams, you just have to pay for one or you take, excuse me, depending on how it's financed, you only will have to take 1 exam to get the certification instead of the 2 exams to get that. So that will be updated with a bunch of the new technologies. That blog post also goes into detail if you're interested in the administrator, the Microsoft 365 Administrator Expert. That one has also been renamed, and there's 2 exams that previously had 2 more exams that you had to take. That's also been reduced down to 1 exam as well. So all this stuff is endpoint focused, good reads. Take advantage of this stuff, and thank you very much. And Garrett, I'll turn it back over to you.
That's awesome. I'm actually excited about the new certs, and just kind of unifying that into one exam. I think that'll be a lot more pleasant to take. So good updates. Thanks, Scott. All right. I'm going to turn it over to Carlos and Nicole. Are y'all with us? Are y'all ready to go?
I am here.
Awesome.
Let's see if I can get this PowerPoint to work here.
Okay. Do you have something you want to share?
Yeah. Let's see if
Cool.
this works. Oh, is that up?
It's there. Look at that.
You guys
Awesome.
see slides?
I will yep, I will turn it over to you both, Carlos and Nicole. And afterwards, if there's still time left over, we'll do some Q&A. So
Sure.
Carlos, take it away.
So hello, everyone. My name is Carlos Diaz, and with me is Nicole. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello. This is Nicole. I'm a PM. I work on the feature development team for Intune for Education. Take a test and set up school PC. Nice to meet you.
Hi, yeah. And I'm also a product manager on the Intune team. Today, we're going to go over a brief overview on Take a Test. For those that don't know what it is, we'll go over kind of what it is, what it does. And then at the end, we'll talk a little bit briefly about changes that have come to the platform and maybe some small things of what's coming. So Take a Test is the Windows. Let me see. Is this did the slide change?
Yeah, you're good.
Yep.
Okay. Trying to use the presenter remote and it's not working. So Take a Test is the Microsoft secure browser platform. Microsoft understands how important testing is to education. So we built a product directly into the platform, directly into Windows, that allows for schools to run their assessments. Now, this is considered a secure browser by most testing platforms. One of the neat things is that there's nothing extra required application-wise. It's built into the product. It's built into Windows. So all it needs is a configuration to be pushed to it. You can actually also configure it manually if you really wanted to. Not really recommended, as it's a little bit more difficult to keep up with, but can be easily managed by Intune. The assessments are launched directly from the login screen, so nothing. You don't have to wait for Windows to come up and then launch something once the student logs in. Show you guys here. And this is going to be just a brief, some demo slides to kind of show you what it looks like. So once it's configured, the student laptop or the student device where the testing is going to take place will have a icon in the lower left-hand corner, as you can see here. This name is really whatever you want it to be. So I called it testing. It could be student exam. It could be the name of a particular exam. It's whatever the administrator decides they want the name to be, something friendly, hopefully for education. Once the student clicks on that button, they're going to get a prompt to sign in. And that sign in really is just going to be a single sign in. There's no password that's going to be attached to it. Everything is configured on the back end to make it easier for the student. Once the student clicks sign in, they will go directly to the configured URL that is part of your secure assessment site. At that point, the student can take their test. And then at the end of the test, hit Control-Alt-Delete to sign out, go back to the login screen. And if this is a shared device that is being used by multiple students for testing, then the next student will go through the same procedure, click testing, and take their exam. As you saw, there is no going into Windows. So this is essentially a kiosk. It is completely secure. There's no tabbing out of this exam. There's no way to get to another website from the exam. It just stays siloed within this particular exam. Now, the setup of this from within Intune is pretty straightforward. You will create a new configuration profile. Select templates as the profile type. Secure assessment education is your configuration profile type. You'll then decide what kind of account type you want to use. You'll see here we have 4 different options. Whether or not you want the printer connected to it as part of the exam, screen monitoring, text suggestion. You'll then add the account name, which is, as I mentioned earlier, this is going to be the friendly name you gave to the in this case testing, to the button. The assessment URL. You will assign it to a group of devices. And then, I'm not sure if you can read this, but you'll review the page, the information that you've supplied, and then deploy that. Now, the computer will take a little while in many cases, just to be perfectly transparent. We've seen it take 15 minutes for a profile to be deployed. It could take a little longer. Just be patient. Once the profile's done deploying, that icon will show up for the user and it'll be ready to use. Now, what's new in Take a Test? And we will ask some questions at the end of this, or we'll open it up for questions and feedback. So we've made some changes recently to Take a Test. One of the things that one of the feedbacks we got a lot was that there was compatibility issues with Take a Test. Up till recently, Take a Test was using the old legacy Edge browser rendering engine, and that was causing compatibility issues with some testing platforms. So just recently, and when I mean recently, I mean December, we released the WebView 2 rendering engine as part of an update. So going forward, your testing platform should all be compatible with anything Chromium based. So if your test provider says that it's Chrome or Chromium compatible, it'll now be compatible with Take a Test. Another update that is, it's out, but it's not out. Kind of preface this a little bit. Multi-URL menu. You'll notice in the previous example I gave that when the student hits sign in, they go directly to the exam. So that is the legacy experience of Take a Test. Going forward, we're working on, and it's already in the docs, so you can already start kind of playing around with it. But we are working on a UI piece to be able to manage this as well. But the idea is that you can now supply, instead of just a single URL, the way you saw in that original example, you'll be able to supply a list of URLs. And this will be presented in a menu, quite like this, that will allow the student to pick from a list of exams. And you'll notice that there's a search at the top. I'm not sure, Nicole, do we know what the limit to the number of URLs we can deploy is? Is there a limit?
I'm not sure there's a limit, but I think just a reasonable amount.
Okay. So yeah, so you have a search in case there is more than what's presented on the screen. But the students will be able to pick from this, and it actually pretty rapidly can update that menu. I think this is something that's been kind of coming, and it has a lot of value. I'll open the floor to any questions, comments, feedback on Take a Test. I know this was probably a really fast presentation, but I'm hoping for more questions and feedback than presentation.
Laura's actually. Go ahead, Richard.
I was just gonna say, Laura's got a question here about Xbox Game Bar, which you're probably gonna say the exact same thing I did.
I was.
But actually, yeah. So it is a good question though, right? Because it's not just Xbox Game Bar. It's also we've seen like the Photos app. We've seen just other applications that are actually dormant that aren't even active kick students out of tests or complain. And so Carlos and Nicole, are we doing anything with Take a Test to either kill those applications or do something to handle those?
Yeah, that's a good question. We do turn off a lot of services that could potentially kick a student out of the test. So if there are any that you know that specifically that you've heard of or you know are causing problems, let me know and we'll try to get them fixed. But it should we do have a list of services that we are tracking, and I'm going to check if Xbox Game Bar is one of them.
Yeah, I don't believe that the game bar runs in the background. I might be wrong, but since and it really depends on a couple different things, because I have also seen people kick off a secure assessment from within Windows. That might be a little different than running it the way that I showed in the demo. Just because we're not actually going into Windows, and I don't know if the game bar is going to run in the background without logging into Windows.
Yeah, it typically, well, Game Bar would run, I believe it's under the Gaming Services UWP. So when you hit Windows key G, the Game Bar would light up, or it'll come up with the overlay or the HUD for that. But I don't know in the temporary user profile that we use to run the test if that UWP is actually invoked.
Yeah, I just tried it on a Hyper-V and it didn't bring up the HUD, but that's a Hyper-V. I don't know if maybe
it wouldn't bring, like if you were in Take a Test, it wouldn't bring it up.
Oh, I see what you're saying, but the test might detect it and
right, because if it's a dormant or if it's just an application that's suspended or it's a process that's suspended, usually what like the third-party testing providers, and we've all kind of seen this, right? If you run any third-party provider, it'll look at it. It has like a list of EXEs that it's basically looking for, and it doesn't really care if they're suspended or not. It just looks through the task list and it's like, okay, there's these 10 EXEs or 20 EXEs or whatever we're looking for, and then if it sees one of those, it won't allow whatever the third-party test provider would run. But because we're in Take a Test, a lot of that stuff probably won't be running because you're running in that guest user profile. But it's, yeah, in terms of Game Bar, I don't know if that service or process is actually running. But you can't actually invoke it, is what Carlos is saying. If you hit Windows key G, it actually won't come up. So it shouldn't really impact taking the test.
Mike has a question. Does it restrict a new window opening? Are you referring to like a pop-up window, Mike?
Yeah, like so we have like certain tests that like when you would click on a login, it would open another window. Now I don't know if that's just bad software, like bad coding on the website, but we couldn't use it because it wouldn't open. Like I guess because it was ultra secure, and it just wouldn't open another, I guess, like not task, like process, or like another like window, like
Right.
or tab.
Yeah.
I don't know if that functionality is there or not, but you know what I mean? Like another window would open up on the
Right.
website.
No, I expect that it's not going to open up another window.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Jesse's got a question. Jesse, do you want to come off mute and ask?
Yeah,
All right,
we
I'll-
have
There
we've
you
got
go.
a few apps that are like I forget the names of them right now, but one of them is DRC. It's a testing secure browser. It's not a web thing. Would that ever be supported? It's like not a web-based testing.
So this is more like an alternative to DRC,
Right.
as opposed to a launch pad for DRC. So because oftentimes you'll have your third-party testing provider, which could be DRC. For me in California, we have the CA Secure browser, and so here in California, our schools have the option to use Take a Test or to use the third-party CA Secure browser. And if you decide to use Take a Test, then you just don't use the secure browser, and you configure Take a Test with the URL to the test that you want to go to, and do it that way. But if you don't have a URL that's provided from your testing provider, or if your testing provider doesn't support Take a Test and they require you to use their browser, then you would just deploy the browser through Intune or through whatever management tool that you're using, Config Manager, to all the machines, and then do what you've probably been doing for a while. But you wouldn't use this in conjunction with DRC.
Gotcha.
When will Take a Test be part of Teams for Education? Mark,
That's a
so
good question.
what are you envisioning when it comes to using it out of Teams? Because you can kind of use it today if you supply a secure assessment link from inside of Teams. It'll actually kick off the assessment.
So are you saying, because I go to Test to Take the website and I put my forms link in there and I get a new link, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. So when I try to put that as a tab in Teams, it won't accept that link because the link has something in front of the HTTP and won't accept it. Or when I try to post it as a link, it won't accept it because it doesn't see it as a true link because of that extra stuff in front of the HTTPS. So I'm not, if you can tell me where to actually have it posted, I'd be very happy, but that's what I'm talking about. It would be great if there was, like I could put a tab at the top of a channel, where I could put a Word document or a website. If I had one that was just take a test, and the teacher just puts the link to their Microsoft form right there, the kids click that tab, it pops up, locks down the computer, the kids take their form, hit submit, and then gives it all back to them. That's what I'm envisioning. If you could make that happen, I got a bunch of teachers that would be very, very happy.
Let me take that back because I thought I could have sworn that actually worked before.
If it does, I'm happy to test it out for you, but I'm not sure. So that's what I'm envisioning. That would just make my teachers extremely happy. Also we do, when you give an assignment can be a quiz, and then everything will go through there. And if we have that link to our student information system, then the grades will go right into our grade book if it's synced that way. And so that's a different than feature, that can it be put into an assignment as a test to take link, so that when those kids click that assignment and click that link, it locks down the browser, allows them to take that form, but that form gets graded and that information gets put into, the assignments to grades of Teams, then it gets automatically synced to their student information, to their grade book. That would be great also. So I got a lot of things that I would love for you guys to be able to do with this. So I've been looking at this for a long time. I've actually been trying to see if we could work ways around it. I just can't get it to work the way that we would like right now. So when I saw this, I got really excited to be here. So thank you, guys.
No, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
Yeah, that was awesome feedback. Thank you. Jonathan has a question. Is this supposed to work in a non-kiosk environment? Kind of a similar question to before.
So as long as the device is running Windows 10 Pro and up, Take a Test is part of the operating system. That secure assessment should be recognized and it should kick off. Now, just to make sure you understand the behavior, Windows, when you click on this, if it's okay, so there's two different ways of doing this. The secure assessment link has a regular mode, which will just open up a browser right inside of the Windows session, and then they have an enforced lockdown, which it's a switch you put at the end of that URL. If you put that enforced lockdown, it will take you out of that Windows session, so it'll kind of use fast user switching to log you out and then go right into that test in the secure browser. Once it's there, then the student's done with their exam form, whatever it is, the student can then come back to their Windows session. Now, there's a few different things that can kind of mess with that. If you have fast user switching turned off, it might have a weird, different behavior. But Jonathan, are you saying that you're not seeing that behavior at all? Jonathan, are you there?
Hey, Jonathan, if you're not with us, if you don't want to come on, or if you are with us, but you don't want to come off mute or anything, feel free to just throw it in the chat and we'll come back. That he's saying, I see that behavior, but received the error message and blank screen. And in his first message, there is an image with the particular error message that he's getting.
Oh.
Hey, Jonathan, did you guys customize your image at all? Like, did you remove any of the built-in Windows apps? Do you know? No? Okay. Yeah, because as far as I know, that URL's generally always worked. You shouldn't be seeing that behavior, so I'm not quite sure why you're seeing that.
Unless you're missing the hashtag in
It looks
front
like
of
he's missing the
enforced lockdown.
hashtag. Yeah, it looks like he's missing the hashtag in front of enforced lockdown.
I threw it, Jonathan, just above your chat. I threw the URL and the hashtag enforced lockdown. Try that with the hashtag and see if it still errors out for you and report back. Just as a reminder to everyone, we've got a channel, right, for community questions. Feel free to use that channel to kind of post updated findings or additional questions, and we can come back to that. So, Jonathan, I'm going to direct you over once this meeting's over, if you'll try it. Go post in the community questions forum and just give us an update on that behavior. Nicole and Carlos both have visibility into that, and we can further go from there. So
it's actually not a hash though; it's an exclamation mark, which he does have. His URL looks right.
What do you mean it's not a hash?
It's supposed to be an exclamation mark. It's a bang.
In the docs, it's a hash. Unless the docs are wrong.
I think the docs are wrong because I've got this document back from 2016 when it was when it was an exclamation mark.
Okay. Try it with a hash and then let us know.
Yeah, see if unless something's changed.
Unless something's changed, yeah. Cool. Bryce has got a question. I was wondering the same thing. Does this require a new /modified config profile every time new tests need to be deployed from IT, or is there some ability for teachers to self-service and deploy new tests?
Yeah, the IT-based exams normally are something that you're going to do centrally, or at least, or doesn't have to be centrally, but whoever's managing the devices is going to be the one to do that. Teacher-wise, as I was mentioning earlier, as long as, and I had still have to test the team scenario, Teams or some other method of deploying an exam, whether that be your LMS, maybe if you put the link in the LMS, that would be the way that a teacher can kind of control that.
Jody wants to know, are we able to embed ticket tests in Teams? You kind of already answered that, right?
Yeah, I'm going to test it out. I could have sworn we could, but maybe something's changed. But at some point, I remember being able to create one of those links, post it as an assignment in the Teams assignment, and the student could click on the link and it kicks off the test. But I'll test it and see.
Thanks, Carlos. Cool. Any other questions revolving around take a test?
This might be a loaded one, but feedback, things that you want to see take a test do.
Really quick, Jesse threw a last question up. When you unassign the test policy, does the test link on the login screen disappear?
That is the expected behavior, yes.
That's the expected behavior. It should.
Can I just add on
Well-
to that a little bit?
Please.
So we used to apply the take a test button through provisioning packages. We just assumed that we'd eventually use it someday, and then we ended up not using it. Eventually, we found students who were taking advantage of the take a test button, I guess because we never configured it, and they were finding ways to do something that we didn't want. I never saw it, but we had a whole bunch of reports that kids were using take a test to exploit the computer. So since we applied it with a provisioning package and not a profile from Intune, we didn't have a way of taking it off, as far as we could tell, without having to reimage a device.
Yeah, once you use a provisioning package, it kind of tattoos it onto the device. You might be able to do a combination of pushing out a new policy from Intune to overwrite what's there with potentially doing the MDM wins setting where it kind of it forces the MDM to win over any kind of local policies. But I don't know what other policies you have on your device that might be affected. So it's just something for you to test.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. I mean, mostly we've eradicated it through reimaging, but if we run across any more, we'll look into it. Thanks.
Any other questions? Comments? Feedback? I hope that the information we provided helps. And for those of you who have looked at take a test a few years back, or have looked at it in the last few years and run into issues with compatibility or just didn't do what you wanted it to do, hopefully you will take another look, see if it does what you want it to do. I think that it's going to be it could be a very valuable part of what we do in education. Garrett, you're on mute.
I'm just talking. I'm gonna put you on the spot, okay? You or Nicole. Can you give us any teases? Anything that you're working on? Updates for Take a Test? It's okay if there aren't any that you can share.
Nothing we can
Gotcha.
share.
Nothing. Okay.
The menu is what's being
Fair
worked
enough.
on right now.
Okay. Good enough. Very cool. Well, thank you both so much for joining and getting some feedback and answering lots of questions. It's been good to see the interactive chat. Yeah, but we do still have some time. So for the rest of the 20 minutes or so, I think we're good to have just kind of open Q&A while Carlos and Nicole are here. Doesn't necessarily have to be about Take a Test, but you've got the team with you. So if anyone wants to throw out a question or raise their hand to come off mute and ask their question, feel free.
Hey, Garrett, we might want to highlight that blog post I dropped in chat. I just saw that last week and totally missed it when I was putting the slides. But there may be some announcements on there that I think folks might be interested in. So we might want to highlight that real quick.
Yeah, you know what? That's a really great call out, Scott. So I'll just share my screen really quick, because if you guys didn't catch, I had been telling y'all about the Reimagine event that was coming up, and the Reimagine event came and went, and we had a little bit of Windows announcements mixed in there. So if y'all can see my screen, we did have published a blog on the education blog specifically about what's new in Windows for Education in 2023. And the first biggest announcement that I think we've all been really, really excited about is new simple sign-in for education customers. This is introducing a federated sign-in that enables students to sign in with other identity providers, specifically ones like Clever. So you can now sign in using those QR codes or QR badges that Clever does so well. This has been a long time ask. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe it's Clever, Google, and Wand identity providers are the ones that are supported out of the gate. This was an SE announcement, but part of this is that later this month, both Windows 11 Pro Education and Windows 11 Education editions will support this as well. So the 3 editions of Windows that will support this feature is Windows 11 SE, Windows 11 Pro Education, and Windows 11 Education. Not Windows 11 Pro or Windows 11 Enterprise or any SKU of Windows 10. This has been a big time ask. Richard, Scott, any comments there?
Yeah, so the providers that you mentioned, and
Yep.
clearly we can see Clever on the screen as being
Yep.
one of the big ones. Those are the ones that we've tested. Now, when you read the announcement, it says any SAML 2.0 identity provider that's compatible with Azure AD, and that's used in an EDU environment. So for those that are federated with other SAML-based providers, even if you're in a higher education environment that wouldn't be using Pro Education, Windows 11 Education would allow you to leverage third-party SAML providers. One of the big questions that I still have is, okay, well, what about Shibboleth, right? Because we've got tons of higher ed that have been asking us for web sign-in, for federated sign-in, leveraging Shib. Is that going to be possible? And what our engineering team is doing right now is they're trying to evaluate if we can announce that we've got full support for this. What I would like is if there are any of you that are listening to this right now that want to work with us to test this out. So if you have Shib integrated with Azure AD and you'd like to help test this out, it would have to be tested on Windows 11, either Pro Education or Education SKUs, which you'll have access to Windows 11 Education if you're a volume licensed customer. We'll have to test on that, but if we can validate that support is working, then that would be huge for us, because this has been a hard journey, I think, on the Shib side of things. So if there's anyone that's willing to help test that out, then I'd be very, very appreciative of anyone that wants to help us with that.
And Richard, I mean, could you elaborate a little bit on why it's been difficult? Because, is it difficult just in the move to Azure AD join and, supporting the protocols of WSFed, WSTrust? Like, what is it specifically that has been such a challenge getting here?
Well, it's not Shib's got its own challenges, but the challenge that we've had with federated sign-in was just Windows has historically been either a local account or you're authenticated to an on-prem domain. And so that's basically it. We added web sign-in support a while ago, actually, and we kind of pulled the feature because it didn't work the way that we wanted to. There's some performance issues, and it just wasn't, the quality of the experience wasn't where we wanted it to be. And so we went back to the drawing board, and what you're seeing on the screen here is what we've actually come up with. And so the performance is much better now. The experience is a lot better. And so now, now that we have the ability to sign into a device, go out to Azure AD, leverage some third-party federated service provider, I think that unlocks a lot of different potential for us and for customers, so they don't have to rely on, okay, I've got to have all my identities synchronized over Azure AD. I've got to be in the Microsoft ecosystem. You can be in the Google ecosystem now and sign into a Windows device. I mean, that's pretty huge. And yes, Google has had their own provider. They have a basically like an exe that you would run on the device, and you can switch out of the Windows authentication provider and use Google's identity provider and sign into a Windows machine leveraging that tool, and it would go and authenticate directly to Google Workspace. With this solution, though, you don't have to install something else. What you would have to do, though, is you'd have to federate between Azure AD and Google or whatever the third-party identity provider is.
And we've got docs out there to help you federate the two. It's actually pretty straightforward.
Yep.
Awesome. I think the next biggest announcement was that from a personalization perspective, we announced stickers and education themes specifically for Windows 11. So students can actually personalize, their desktop backgrounds with digital stickers and different theme packs, and just gives them a touch of personalization, in a one-to-one scenario. It's kind of fun for them. So it's a nice blend, right? Something for IT pros as well as something for the students to make Windows more personable. So yeah, great little blog. Scott's thrown it in the chat. And yeah, we're extending the invitation if you want to help us test some of those scenarios like SHIB or any of the other IDPs. I mean, it looks like ClassLink is pretty popular as an SSO. So if you're using ClassLink as an IDP to do that, test it. Let us know.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys have if you have any other IDPs, and if you are testing them and you do let us know, we'll let our engineering teams know so we can document that as a provider that actually works. Because we just can't test every single one of them. But if we get the feedback from you guys, say, hey, I've tested this, it works great. That's awesome, because then we can let everyone else know as well.
Yep. Rapid ID, I think, is another one that's popular in K-12, at least in the Texas area, or in the Southwest. So if anyone's a identity automation customer, keep us posted there. Awesome. Cool. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen there. Anything else? Anyone have any questions they want to raise? Carl says he's in for testing, so Carl, I'm leaning on you. Report back.
Yep.
So yes, there is in that blog. There is now a documentation for configuring federated sign-in. I just threw it in the chat. It's a little light. You'll probably have to do some work depending on the vendor specifically. But the custom OMA URIs right now, because it's not lit up in Intune as a specific profile, but the custom OMA URIs, we guide you on how to create those and deploy those out. So it should be fairly straightforward, but if you need to federate, your tenant to the IDP that you've got, there may be some in between that we can't give you all the instructions on, but for the most part, it should be pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and I think they're actually working on updating the docs, because originally this was all for 11 SE, but now as they're extending this out to pro education and education, the docs themselves are going to just say, hey, this is for 11 SE. They're going to update those, and also the custom OMA URIs that are in there. We do have Intune controls for those things. They just haven't updated the docs to specify where to go in the settings catalog to set
that. Okay.
Same OMA URIs. Yeah.
Awesome. That's good news. So there are some important considerations, though. We didn't talk about them, but shared PC policy. So if you have shared PC mode enabled, whether it's via provisioning package or directly through Intune, federated sign-in is not going to work. I think hopefully they're working on that, but for right now, that won't work. And then take a test. Ironically, after we talked about it, take a test won't work. So.
Yeah, and we definitely are working on the shared PC scenarios, so that's gonna.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Cool. Let's see. Kevin's got a question. I do have another question about Windows licensing for education in Azure AD. We have the following. There's a screenshot, but we are wondering if there's a Windows 10 11 Education A3 for faculty or students.
No, there's not.
No.
This is.
Yeah.
So when we first released this, they actually asked us for feedback on it, and I was like, well, the first piece of feedback is you could probably change the name to Education A3 or Education for A3 or A5 for faculty, but they just said that no, it's not something we want to change, because it's basically just more of a display kind of thing. But the way that this works, though, is that if you do deploy that enterprise license to a pro device, then it's going to upgrade the pro device to Windows 10 Enterprise. But if you deploy that same license to a user and that user's signing into a pro education device, then it's going to upgrade them to education. But you can't go from pro to Windows 10 or Windows 11 education. If you're starting at pro, then you're going to go to enterprise. And so if you want to get the devices onto education, you've got a couple ways of doing it. You can either just re-image them with Windows 10 or 11 education, or you can deploy a product key, like a Mac key, or you can use KMS or something like that, and have those devices running Windows education. But yeah, this is a common question we get all the time. It's like, okay, I don't know what these enterprise licenses are for. I'm education. I want to deploy education. How do I do that? And it's unfortunately something that they didn't want to change on the licensing side of things. So that works.
Laura, you've got your hand up. Do you want to come off mute?
Sure. Hey guys, I have two questions. So kind of on the subscription activation line, we've had a lot of devices actually, and I have a case in with Microsoft, but they're just trying to get with their technical advisor on it. But Windows or devices are just switching back to Pro. They were Enterprise and now they're Pro. I don't know if anyone else has seen that or if it's just me, which is possible. But it was weird. Like it was Enterprise, switched to Pro, and then now today I've seen it where it's back to Enterprise. So he said it was some sort of licensing issue, but I don't know if anyone else has heard that or seen that in the field.
Is this a device that's used by a single person or is it shared?
Single person.
Okay. Did the Windows 10 or 11 license get unassigned, or were there any licensing changes that were made within your tenant recently?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Because to me, what it sounds like is that the license got removed from the user, and it may have been removed for a while. I mean, it isn't like if the license gets removed immediately, I think there's like a grace period.
30 day.
Yeah, it's like 28 or 30 days, something like that. So the device after that amount of time should fall back to the Pro license that the device would have shipped with. So to me, what it sounds like is that license got removed. Now, if you didn't do it, then maybe something on the back end, on our end, may have changed. That's definitely possible.
Sure.
But yeah, that's what that sounds like to me.
Okay. Yeah, I have a case in with them. We're doing some log files and all that fun stuff. So we'll get to the bottom of it, I'm sure.
Keep us posted. Yeah, I mean, if anyone else sees that, right? If we start identifying that as a trend, let us know quickly so we can escalate.
Yeah, that's why I just wanted to kind of throw it out there, just in case anyone else may have seen it and just not notice. And you don't notice it until you actually look, right? You're not. I mean, there's nothing that really changes that from the end user perspective that you see that it would trigger them to say, oh, my license is incorrect, right?
Yeah. It's not something common that we've seen. So if you're seeing it, it sounds like maybe it's a one-off thing, but as Garrett's pointing out, like if a lot of people are seeing it all at once right now, then there's probably some other larger issue at play.
The other thing I wanted to kind of throw out to my fellow EDU support staff, does anyone have any sort of documentation or checklist that, when troubleshooting profiles or any device in Intune as far as getting settings, does anyone have like a checklist that they can send to their or that they have for their technicians? I was thinking about developing one for my team, but I didn't want to invent the wheel, so I was just trying to see if there's anything I could pull from.
Your site-based techs, like your campus technicians.
Yeah. And just say here are these things that you can check to make sure, obviously running a sync, doing that report, but if they're not, just trying to figure out, is there, specific event logs that they could be looking at to make sure that it's applied, just kind of, they're first level support, but, they do have a lot of knowledge as well inside of that, just to be able to maybe dive a little bit deeper to provide that information to us.
I'm curious. Who has something?
No. Okay. Well, that's fine. I probably will try and come up with something, and I'll share.
Please do. I think that could be a great discussion. If you could share it in the Teams channel, share what you come up with as a starting point and get some people to collaborate.
Okay.
I think that would be super cool.
Just because,
Now,
I mean, there's event logs that, it's known to us, but once you start looking at event logs, if you're not looking for something specific, it's just, there's a lot of stuff there, right? There's a lot of data. So kind of trying to narrow it down to look for this specific event log, or to make sure that the setting applied, or make sure that you can go to and run the reports. Just a quick one pager, a checklist. It's
To
always
help
easy
them be
to say
self-sufficient, right?
right. It's always easy to say run a GP update force and run a GP result. Those are things that they know how to do right now.
yeah, Laura.
Yeah, and
Laura, I'm assuming they don't have access to the console.
Some of them do, some of them don't.
Okay, because if they do have access to the console, and this is a little slower than they might like, if they're trying to troubleshoot something like right away.
Mm-hmm.
But what you can do from within Intune is if you want to get the logs that you need, you can do the collect diagnostics from here, and then that'll generate a download for them to actually download those diagnostics. And then what you end up with is it's a nice looking zip file that's massive, but it'll have all the different things that they'll need to look at. And this is a starting point, right? Because they don't know yet what to look for,
Right.
but this will at least give you what you need. Now, the biggest challenge that I think anyone's going to have in troubleshooting this is that we don't, and we can definitely do better at this, but we don't have one log file that shows you exactly everything that has been applied. Like if you look at the device management log within the event viewer, you'll see some things come in, but you won't see everything. And you may only see things that have failed for certain policies or certain things that have come down. But if something succeeded, it may not actually write it to that event log. And a lot of this goes back to how some of these configuration service providers were actually developed, and how whoever wrote that CSP decided to log it. And so that's why, like, when you go into this diagnostics, it's like, okay, I can look at the event logs, but sometimes I actually have to look at like the registry. And there are certain locations in the registry that you have to look at as well. So it's not super easy to do this. And I do this a lot for customers, and even people on my team are like, hey, here are the logs for, this customer's problem. Can you tell me like what's happening? And oftentimes it's a lot of work. So I don't know anyone that has any one good one pager or two pager to kind of go through this yet. But if you make something, or if you want some help, or like if you had a question or something, don't hesitate to ask me or anyone.
And I'm still learning on what actually to find, target and what to look for too. So
but like the basics, right? Go into the account settings and initiate a sync, or whatever. Open up the company portal. Do you see applications? Like very basic things is what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe some targeted log files to go dig a little bit deeper. What about the new troubleshooting experience too that we just released? Yeah,
so if we look at that, if I could find where we put it. Where did troubleshooting go? I'm missing it.
It's under troubleshooting and support.
Oh,
not in it.
It's actually in the place that we call it, right? Which you don't normally do those things. So if someone comes in here and just looks for like a student account or something, like student, no, didn't do that. Okay, let's try this. How does it apply? All right. So if you're just search for a user, I mean, it's at very, very high level. You can see what's been deployed and what's been applied. You can look at the different devices that user has associated with them. If you're using a provisioning package, then they wouldn't actually have the device associated to them because there's no primary user associated with that device. But you could see the policies that have been deployed. And so you can see some of this stuff. Although the problem generally is that I'm not seeing anything, right? Like I don't see a policy, or I don't see something in the console. You might not see it because there's a delay. And so oftentimes it's like, well, I need to look at the logs locally, right, and figure out, like, did something come down and I'm just waiting on Intune to do something. But this is a good place to get started if someone's new and they just want to figure something out. They could go this way. You can also filter it by just individual devices. So if a user uses multiples, you can go and click in, and then you'll see the different applications and policies and things that are associated just with that user and that device. So something else that.
Yeah, Scott's already offered up. We're going to do a technical deep dive. What happens when a device gets enrolled into Intune, log scheduled tasks, and we already have 6 likes on that comment, Richard. So looks like we have
So is Scott doing that session?
I think it should be led by Scott, and then Carlos is going to have to come back.
Okay.
And then you'll sprinkle in some anecdotes. That's what I think.
So one of the things that I've been seeing is that the setting applies. It says successful, but it's not applying on the device itself, or something is not, so even that level, as far as I think it's supposed to be there, everything shows it's successful, but it's just not working.
Yeah. And again, that's exactly where you got to go look at logs and look at even logs, or look at the registry to see, hey, did this policy even write to the registry? So yeah, I think we definitely need to do a session on that, to really kind of go deeper into, because the Intune is going to tell you one thing, but if something's not making it to the device, then how can I tell what actually is happening there? So yeah, we can definitely have a session on that.
Yeah. Awesome. We are at time. Laura, thank you so much for the questions. Hopefully this was helpful. Again, post in the Teams channel, report back to us your findings and anything that you create. Would love to see it. But thank you all. This concludes Endpoint Office Hours for today, February 14th. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday and a very happy Valentine's Day. Thank you again for joining us. I will make sure that the recording gets uploaded shortly, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
All right. Thanks a lot, Garrett. Thanks a lot, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Happy Valentine's Day.